Before we begin, thank you very much to Coboxite for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for your generosity. That keeps the channel going. That keeps me doing what I do here for everybody. Thank you very much for doing so. I know the Patreon can get expensive for some. If you want to support without that, just hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notify bell, just leave comments, interact, basically. I have buttons down below. Just hit buttons and we'll be good. Inversely, you can go follow my socials, meet me over at Blue Sky, or meet my Magnetar project over on Blue Sky. Socials are in the descriptions. If I hit 300 on there, I'm going to start dropping lore on everybody, because I've got a lot I can explain. But I want to see people there first. I want you guys to learn about what I've been developing for like literally 2 years. All right, I want everyone on board, and I'm glad to have you there. Okay, let's talk today's video subject. You see the brand new missing link Arcee on screen right now, and everyone's excited that the lost G1 toy is actually getting a brand new figure. And it brought to mind the fact that I don't think I've seen a good Arcee toy yet. We'll get to that here in a minute, but the truth is, like, there's just some figures out there. There's some characters in the Transformer universe where I don't know what it is. Like, even if their design is okay to make a transforming toy out of, they just never seem to get a good toy that I can really click with. So that's what we're discussing today. Now, to be fair, if I had done this video a few years ago, this would have been a very different list, but Masterpiece has kind of saved a lot of characters from this. Case in point, things like Masterpiece Rhinox gives us a good Rhinox toy at last. You know, the Thrilling 30 had issues like loose knees, small chest, etc. No one likes the Kingdom version. And then we know what the Beast Wars one was like. It's kind of rough. It's been rough being Rhinox, but this one's really, really good. This one really, really good. I could say the same thing about Skids. I mean, he's had a rough go of it too. A lot of his toys came up kind of half-baked. Okay, the Legacy one's okay. The Legacy one is okay. I think I'm just tired of it. But the Masterpiece is undeniable. It's not overly complicated. It does everything it needs to do. It's got some really cool little extra features, and it's just a fun toy. So, yeah, I give that credit. Even the exosuit. The exosuit was going to make this list, but then I started looking at the Masterpiece again and going, okay, you know what? They actually got it right. You know, they got it about as close as that's going to ever get. And then we get back to Arcee, where I would argue even Masterpiece couldn't save this one. I mean, she's going to have the same problems no matter what you do with the character. An enormously heavy backpack, a feminine design with very small heels. If you're going to be show accurate, it means she's going to be very back heavy with nothing to support the back weight, which gives her a very limited articulation. She's posed in a lot of cheesecake shots, even by official media. And I get the feelings part of it is because they don't want to put her in too many action poses she can't hold. So easier to just have her laying on her side in a suggestive way, because that way they don't have to balance anything. But beyond the fact that, you know, she is a masterpiece, but she is still very much all shell, a vehicle crumpled up and stored on her back. She just looks awkward, doesn't she? It's that low collar and the fact that her chest is sagging. I know Transformer characters are 4 million years old, but you know, like, can you be a little bit nicer to the design, please? It looks awkward. It looks awkward. She looks like she has a Minecraft block in the middle of her chest. It's not nice. But Arcee, as we said, it's been rough going for her. Her first toy was a repaint of a Black Arachnia toy that I didn't think was all that good. Again, it's a lot of shell hanging off of her back, and she has high heels. So good luck standing her up in any way, shape, or form. And yet we know about the Kingdom one. Like the Earthrise one specifically. This one sucks. I know this one sucks. It's another shell former. Almost no part of the vehicle makes the robot. They had so little idea for what to do with it. It just comes off into a, air quote, hoverboard. No, it comes off as a chunk of the car you didn't know what to do with. So unfortunately, even that one is a little bit rough, even with modern designing. I ironically, 10 years ago, we got it right, at least as close as we could. The Generations Arcee was actually a really nice figure. Hasbro kind of screwed it up with the black plastic, but what are you going to do? They're scared of releasing all pink toys. I don't know why. We did get this one again for Studio Series 86. It's way better and probably the best Arcee we're going to get. But again, it's still mostly just, a big chunk of car hanging off her back that she folds into. It's just by design, Arcee can't have a good toy that is also show accurate. It's just not physically possible. Ironically enough, the best toy she has when Arcee was at her best was when she was Blur. The Blur retool from Titan's Return is a really good toy, and I think what needs to be done as a modern Arcee figure, bulk her out, let her actually have mass to her. She doesn't have to be like wide-hipped and thin-footed just to be feminine in design. She's a robot. You don't have to make her this way. This looks fine. This looks good. This looks like Warrior Arcee. I think this needs to be done more often. Masterpiece, I don't think saves Trax either. I don't know if it was just me. Actually, I know it's not just me. I've run this past people before. Trax as a masterpiece is very underwhelming. It does everything it's supposed to, and it overall looks good, but it doesn't feel good. There's something about it as a masterpiece toy that just does not feel like it's masterpiece level. The engineering is kind of simple. Some shortcuts are taken. The front of his legs in robot mode, those are just panels that you swing out from the sides of the legs during transformation. That's not a solid piece on the front. It's literally just a panel on a stem. It's very slapdash for what Masterpiece is supposed to be, and for the cost of a toy like this, it really doesn't feel great. It doesn't have that Masterpiece magic to it that I look for when I'm transforming one. It's underwhelming. As these like Masterpiece standard size cars go, he's underwhelming. I mean, granted, the first toy was okay. I'm trying not to judge too much based on like the G1 toys because, it's 1984, 85. They could only be so good. And Trax, for the most part, was one of the better ones. I mean, he looks like he does in the cartoon. That's the animators doing good, not the toy, but you know what I mean. I mean, the only real downside to the original toy is the fact that the legs depend on springs inside them in order to stand the toy up. I've had 2 copies of this toy. Both of them have the exact same problem. The springs in the legs are so weak, they cannot stay expanded. So he looks like just this little runt of a Trax on my shelf. The Generations toy for him, like the Reveal the Shield, is also just weird. Similar to the Masterpiece, he doesn't really feel good to play with. And I know there's going to be people who like the toy. Keep in mind, I'm just voicing my opinion here. If you liked it, that's you. That's all fine. But for me, this toy just feels odd. There's a lot of things in the torso especially that just, I feel like there needs to be something locking things in, and it just doesn't exist. The toy feels kind of flimsy in hand, and I'm not even entirely sure why. Like, it feels like it should be fine. It just isn't. It's underwhelming. Like Trax's other toys, it's just somewhat underwhelming. And I know people are going to argue that. There are people who still like this toy. Like I said, that's fine. I don't think anyone liked his most recent figure. Did anyone like his newest toy in Kingdom? I don't think anyone did. This one is just a mess. This one is just a sloppy figure, and for a design that feels like it should be easy to do as a solid piece, I am kind of stunned the fact that like it just seems to escape modern Hasbro engineering. It's not great. It's not fun. Like, it doesn't feel as good as a lot of the other figures in the line do. I don't know why. It just doesn't. You might be able to make a case for the alternator. I will tell you, the alternator is really good looking in both modes. I would like the play value in the robot mode to be a little bit better. I mean, it looks like he's got good articulation, and technically he does, but a lot of it is hampered, especially in the legs. Like, his leg articulation is actually a lot worse than it looks, and that's what holds that one back as well. I think this is as close as we got to a really good Trax figure. At the very least, he feels solid, which is something I can't say about several of his releases. And I wasn't going to harp on this guy too much, but I just kept finding examples. Like, I think even his Action Master got this character totally wrong. How do you get the color on his face wrong? Like, seeing tracks without the red on his face is just weird. It doesn't look like him. You could convince me this is some random European G1 bot, and I would believe you. And it does not help that his little Action Master partner just kind of looks like he puts a dumpster on his head. It ain't a pretty sight. So I'm still waiting for Trax to get something that feels like a good, modern, solid toy. You knew this part was coming, because it's me. Okay, I know some of you don't understand that setup. You're new to the channel. Welcome. I hope you're enjoying your stay. I don't like Hotshot. Armada one specifically. I understand Hotshot got really good toys later on in Cybertron, and of course his modern Cybertron figure is really, really nice. But I've never really been a fan of the Armada design, nor do I enjoy the toys for it, because they all have their own flaws. For this one, the articulation is kind of terrible. This one is incredibly hampered by the gimmicks that they came up with. And admittedly, also because this is an 11th hour design change. The original one was not physically possible, even though it made it all the way to a photographed prototype stage. So I'm not a fan of this one. Of course, I've never been a fan of this one. It's just a goofy figure. They went ahead and did it again in Universe 2.0, and again, this toy is very problematic. In this case, it's the shoulders and the kibble. Again, the original one had next to no shoulder articulation. This one has shoulder articulation, but it's so hampered by the junk hanging off of him, you can't use it. It comes down to the panels on the back, which don't have any good way of folding up and just kind of get in the way of everything you're trying to do. And there's other little things about him that are awkward, like the fact that his feet hinge upward, which means that if those hinges on the feet are loose, you can't balance him in certain positions and poses, making him very awkward and kind of like prone to tumbling over. So no, it's not a very well designed figure. Like, it's very, very hampered by all the kibble that is hanging off of it, off its back, off its arms, etc. Now, the modern one we did a review of, and I will be honest, yes, it's the best one that Hotshot's ever gotten. But even then, I'm still not really impressed by it. You know, Hotshot has kind of like a linebacker kind of stocky look to him. Like, all of his animation depictions has him kind of like with a heavy upper body, meaning the scrawny arms in this one just does not hit the right note for me. But it's the legs. It's just how junky the legs look. It's just the panels that are loosely tabbed together. They're very hollow looking from the inside, and they, again, hinder articulation because there's nowhere for his legs to bend when you have the kibble in the proper location on the back of the leg. It's just getting in the way, and it's frustrating. This was so close. If this toy had been engineered to have the legs look a little bit more solid and just be a little bit nicer in design, you'd have a hit here. You'd have a winner. And it's still a good toy in sense. But it's frustrating that this toy has been giving us flaws and errors ever since its inception. And I'm still waiting on a good one. And then this one we don't even talk about. Yeah, let's just move on. We've been trashing Wheelie since 1986. Like, I think this was like the fandom's first punching bag when we first organized on the internet in the first place. Because no one likes Wheelie to begin with. And then we have this weird mess of a toy with a orange Zordon face floating in the middle of his big bulbous orange body. It's not a pretty figure. And certainly not even close to how he looked in the cartoon. But let's be honest, it's a G1 toy. It's a 1986 G1 toy where they were simplifying things and America was doing the designing instead of Japan. Things like this were going to come up. But he's had a rough go of it. You know, here's the Titans Return figure where the colors are completely wrong. We've got the wrong shade of orange. The head is not done correctly. I don't know why his canopy is black. It's basically just defying just about every design of the previous Wheelies. it's an okay toy, but it's leaving a lot to be desired. You know, it feels like someone else's attempt to do Wheelie, not an official release. It's odd. It's just odd. I will admit, the more recent effort on Wheelie, the core class, it is actually a decent enough toy. Like, it looks like he does in the cartoon, so, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it is still awkward and leaving things to be desired. Like the front end of the vehicle, which looks really nothing like how he did. It's just coming as close as the engineering could at that size. His fists are hanging out the back of the car. They don't hide or transform in any way, shape, or form. And I understand that this is technically scaled to other Transformers. He is very small compared to others. But I take a look at things like 86 Bumblebee, and I see, like, that feels like where Wheelie's size should be. You know, not like deluxe size, but like small deluxe, where we can focus on giving him good engineering levels and hide all of these weird things like exposed hands and stumpy front ends. There's definite room here to grow. It's okay, but I would still kind of avoid calling it good. Ironically, the best Wheelie we ever got was Jazz. Because a repaint of Jazz with a new head ended up being a really good figure, but we called it Wheelie. And then there's whatever this figure was, and we don't talk about this one either. Knockout's kind of in a similar position. I desperately need a good Knockout toy because the character is very, very good. His toy is very, very bad. You know, the panels that are very awkward to position, very thin pieces all around, and just a total lack of show accuracy. You know, and this was at a time where this should not have been difficult. Hasbro was knocking it out of the park with some of these designs, and then this one came along. You know, like you can't, like, it's hard to like take a look at things like the Viacon and how show accurate that is and how well engineered it is, and then to go into Knockout, a major character, and go, you just, I don't know, slap it together. I don't know. He had another attempt at this too. I know the Lego ones are never going to be good. The ones who aren't done by Lego, I mean. But at the very least, I ask, can you just make the vehicle look like something that Knockout would actually drive? Please? Please? It's not an off-road, like, dune buggy. He's supposed to be a sports car. Ironically, the only good Knockout toy we got was Jazz. Yeah, it's the 86 Jazz this time. And yeah, I mean, it is a good toy named Knockout, but it certainly does not look like Knockout, does it? Like, in passing, it does. It kind of does. But it's not designed to be the Knockout. It's not the one we really want, is it? Still waiting on that. Still waiting on one who actually looks like the Prime design, not like a G1ified version that feels very, very watered down. This one is purely based on color, but I'm still waiting for a decent Sunstorm. And I don't know why this seems to be so difficult. It's like Hasbro actively avoids doing this color scheme. You know, it's usually left to convention exclusives or Takara to do. Even though the character was a major feature in some major comic books, and one of the very first new G1 Transformer characters introduced in a more modern era. So where are the new toys? And when we do get toys, why does this always happen? Sunstorm is an orange jet. Why do they turn him yellow? This is like so confusing to me. Even Takara makes this mistake with the Masterpiece line. Why is he yellow? I don't get it. This is not a difficult thing. You just make him orange. He just looks way too bright. And as yellow, you're losing the whole sun part of him. You know, like the orange actually looks hotter than the yellow. Like it works better for what the character is supposed to convey. And Takara didn't get this color scheme right. Hasbro really didn't get it right. And look at this Ronald McDonald looking son of a bot. It's one of the ugliest Masterpiece toys ever. Like, to call it Masterpiece is kind of sinful. There's colors in spots where he never had color before. Why? Why are his legs white? Why? I don't know. Why aren't his forearms white? Why does he just have white gloves like he's Mickey Mouse? This is not Sunstorm. And while we're at it, neither is this. Because they finally got the orange right, and then they ditched the white. What is wrong with you? Why is this so difficult? Just get the color pattern right. Like, this isn't like, oh, well, he's not getting any brand new toys. He's not getting any good sculpted toys or anything like that. This, like, the engineering's a mess. No. This is just color. That's all you had to do. Just color correctly, and they can't even do that. Let's wrap up with a few that have only a few examples, but I think it's worth noting. I think Octane desperately needs a better toy. So the original G1, obviously the triple changers in G1 are always going to be flawed. They only had so much engineering they could do in 1985. And Octane feels like a fun toy. I've messed around with one, but I've never actually owned one. It's just that it's that vehicle mode that's rough. It's that vehicle mode, that very obvious robot arms just kind of sticking off the side of the car, or the truck rather. Like, that's not going to drive on the road, is it? That's just not drivable, is it? But like I said, I'm not going to harp on those. You know, they're old toys. It's what they could do at the time. What was their excuse in 2008? Like, why did they have to relegate such a huge chunk of the vehicle into, like, the original, it was a shield, and I will admit, like, I always hate when they have to take a piece of engineering off and just call it a shield, but I will forgive it in 1985 and in 1986 when the engineering was limited. It's hard for me to forgive it in 2008, especially when they try to make it look like a giant comb. I don't understand it. It looks like he's about to comb the desert in Spaceballs. That's not a good design. It's just not. Aside from, and then you put in the fact that, like, he's not a tanker truck anymore. The jet mode has these wings that are way too small. He's very scrawny and svelte in areas of the robot mode. I think he's overall still kind of fun as a toy, but obviously very flawed. And I know the Titan's Return is a decent figure. This one is a decent take on Octane. You are still dealing with similar problems. Like, he's got a bunch of junk hanging off the jet, wings that are way too small. It's a better attempt, but seeing all the improvements they've made from the Titan's Return toys to the other triple changers really has me in the mood to actually get proper ones done. And I'm weird that Octane is the last one left, and maybe he has the least room for improvement, but I definitely think the toy can and should be improved upon. You know, especially that jet mode. We went from having a rough truck mode to a rough jet mode. And I just feel like you could be doing it better than this. It's okay, but it's not great. And I'm looking for great here. And here's the one I noticed recently, because I just got the G2 version of the toy, the modern one, I should say. You know, this breakdown is always the one out of the combiners that just gets the short end. Like, okay, fine. He does really good in G1, but of course he's G1. It's a two-step transformation. Like, of course that one's okay. And then we got this one in Combiner Wars. This is the second worst mold in Combiner Wars. It's second only to Brawl. It's very scrawny in the arms, very weird proportions in the legs, very blocky in design overall. And not in a, like, pleasant transformer way, more like a, we didn't want to, like, figure out curves and design on this toy. It's just clunky. You know, it's not really fun to mess with, you know. And then, of course, we have the modern one. And I think, does anyone like this toy? Honestly, does anyone like this toy? I mean, you've got that stupid, like, spoiler that comes off because they couldn't figure out how to engineer that into the vehicle mode without having it come apart. They pass it off as, oh, it's a blade weapon. It's like, no, it's a bad boomerang. It's a terrible design. You've got the back kibble that opens up for no given reason. I don't know why there's an added transformation step that literally does nothing except make the back kibble more noticeable. It's not to wrap it around the windshield that ends up on his back, because that doesn't fold down far enough for all of this extra engineering to actually accomplish anything. It's ugly and it's sloppy. And when all the other Combiner War toys, and all, I guess in this case, all the other Legacy Combiner toys, when those turned out fine, it looks like the Aerialbots are turning out fine, why did he get such a bad look? And then what hurts me is, like, this is the one they retooled. So the Wild Rider is in the same situation now. And again, the irony is, the only time I ever saw a good breakdown, at least G1, breakdown, he was Sideswipe. And even then, this was incidental because they had the head lying around from the G2 BotCon toy. It's actually okay, but again, it ain't breakdown, and it's again a weirdly limited release. It's odd how they have to come up with like weird repaints like this just to get the character a good toy sometimes. It's disappointing. Like, if you're a fan of these characters and you're waiting a long time for them to get something decent, and then what you finally get has these really deep flaws to them. And I understand there's some good toys on this list. I'm speaking my opinion. Ultimately, even if I acknowledge that some of these toys are ultimately okay, they could be better. And I think fans of the characters deserve for them to be better. Especially some of them you've been waiting around a long, long time, and you're still waiting. And after so many characters have had so many turns with getting good figures, it's overdue. Trax fans, like you especially, unite. Get a good Trax figure made. Let it be known that it is still a necessary thing. But that's my rant for the day. And these are just a few examples. I'm sure everyone's got their own. You are free to leave that in the comments below. And as always, I will see you next time. You've been waiting a long time, haven't you? But the wait's almost over. You're about to meet the brightest star in the universe. We're going to make an impact.